Welcome everybody to the monthly MIDAS webinar. It's really nice to have you all here. Today, we're going to hear from the folks at NIH about opportunities for funding, and particularly with NIGMS. So I'm going to introduce our presenters here in a second, but before I do, I wanted to really thank our presenters for taking the time to talk to us today and for all the support that they give throughout the process of extramural funded research. And I'm guessing some of the folks on the webinar are aware of this, but you know, the intramural staff at NIH are really the unsung heroes, I think, of the research world, because we rely on them for so much help and guidance, and they make the process run. And they do so in a way that gets very little, at least to my mind, very little credit or visibility, but they really do work hard and keep things going. And so I appreciate the efforts, and I think everybody else should thank the folks who do this work to keep the rest of us going. So with that, let me introduce our speakers. We have today two folks who work closely with the MIDAS Coordination Center. Nguyen is our program officer. Han has a background in chemical and molecular engineering and biophysics. He spent time at the University of California, Irvine, and also at the Henry M. Jackson Foundation for the Advancement of Military Medicine before joining NIGMS, where he now works as a program officer, as you can see, in the Division of Biophysics, Biomedical Technology, and Computational Biosciences. Nguyen is our scientific coordinator, who basically works with the MIDAS Coordination Center as a representative of NIGMS to ensure that we're on track and that we're doing the things that they hope to see that we're doing, and that we just have a good relationship back and forth so we can be responsive to NIGMS concerns. Jean has a background in precision medicine and pharmaceutical world. She worked at the NIH Center for Scientific Review in Biomedical Computing, Health Informatics, Mobile Health and Technology, and Smart Devices, and SBR grants. And now she is the chief of the Bioinformatics and Computational Biology branch in the Division of Biophysics, Biomedical Technology, and Computational Biosciences at NIGMS. So Han, Jean, thank you for coming and taking the time to speak with us. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Nguyen, for that introduction. It's a great pleasure to be here presenting a webinar on the funding process and opportunity at NIH, especially at NIGMS. So again, my name is Nguyen. So NIGMS here stands for National Institute of General Medical Sciences. So I will use that often. So today we will go over an overview of the NIH and NIGMS system. So this webinar will learn about the NIH funding process and many funding opportunities at NIGMS. And if we have time, we can go over some tips for successful exploration of the NIH funding system. As you know, NIH system is very complicated. Through Congress, we received a large amount of funding of $48 billion. Majority of that is for extramural research. There are 27 institutes and centers at NIH with different mission, priorities, budgets, and philosophy of funding. So therefore, there are different ways of funding selection can be made. So that's why we want to go over that a little bit, at least for the institute that we're at NIGMS. We receive about the fifth largest funding from Congress. We have about $3 billion. Before that, let's go over the mission of NIH in general, which is to seek fundamental knowledge about the nature and behavior of living system and the application of that knowledge to enhance health, lengthen life, and reduce illness and disability. For NIGMS, we have a smaller mission. We focus on supporting basic research and technology development that is aimed at understanding general principles, mechanisms, and processes of biological systems. So it's worth repeating the mission because it is if any application that comes into us that doesn't pass, is not complying with this mission, we have to return them. So the mission here is to support basic research that increase the understanding of basic biological processes and lays the foundation for future advances in disease diagnosis, treatment, and prevention. We support scientists that work on different levels of living systems, ranging from molecules to cells to tissues and organs in research organisms, humans, and population. As I mentioned earlier, in addition to funding research that is trying to answer some basic questions about biology and they perform hypothesis-driven research. We also support technology development as well, and this technology development to help with the understanding of the general principle, mechanism, processes. We want to emphasize that we do not support research that focus on a single class of cell, tissues, and organ diseases, because there are many other institutes out there that fund those kind of projects. So what we want to learn is basic principles. So I will spend some time talking about MIDAS proposal that we would like to fund. So this presentation will learn about the process of preparation and submitting a application to the NIH. So the first step that you will want to know is to identify the institute that will fit your science. And I will show you different way of doing that. And then we can find the appropriate grant mechanisms for your application. And we will learn about the different stage of the NIH grant cycle and different roles that NIH staff play in that cycle itself. And some of the best practices for application submission. So to find appropriate funding institute, we luckily have a online database. It's called NIH Report. Through this database, you can search for any information, but one module is very useful. It's called Matchmaker. Through Matchmaker, you can enter your abstract of a potential proposal, and with the specific aims, you can find related or similar funded projects, and it will give you a list of all the possible institutes that would fund your projects as well, and to make sure that if you're interested in getting funded through NIGMS, then NIGMS has to be one of the top 6 top choices here. It also gives you contact information of potential program officers as well, so that you can contact them and ask if your project is appropriate for the branch and division and institute. Once you find a appropriate institute, you can find a funding mechanism that will support your proposal, and there are many funding announcements out there. But if you're interested in getting funded through NIGMS, then NIGMS have to be one of the participating organizations listed on the top of the funding announcement. We have 3 funding cycles that you can submit. So for any given year, the fiscal year end in September, beginning in October. So the first cycle started in January for the submission, and the funding decision is made sometime in September. So therefore the announcement, the notice of award can be issued in October and November. As you can see, this process takes a long time. So therefore you have to plan accordingly. We also have 2 more cycles of submission in May or June, and the third one is submission in September and October. So let's walk through a typical grant cycle. When you have an idea and you want to turn that into an application with or without preliminary data, we will talk about this more later on. But once you prepare your application, your institution have to be the one that submitted that application, and that application will go to the first place it go to is the Center of Scientific Review. The Center of Scientific Review is independent center, so NIGMS have no influence on that one. They will make 2 decisions. One is to select a appropriate study section for peer review, and then it will find a matching institute for you. So if the work is on basic science, it will send to NIGMS, and then together the study section and the program officer can actually review the scientific merit. In general, we submit the application to the council for additional overview review as well, to ensure the integrity and the review process is appropriate. And then once that is done, then we can program officer can actually make funding recommendation, and if that application is successful, then you get your notice of award right away. Well, it takes a few weeks more, after which the grants management team have to perform an administrative review. But if it's rejected, then we advise that you would revise and resubmit your application. So who should you contact at NIH? So in addition to scientific program officers, we have scientific review that working for the Center of Scientific Review, and then we also have grants management as well. So the portion that you want to talk about scientific aspect of your application before and after a review is your program officer, someone like myself, who can help if to see if your research is appropriate for our institute or not. And you before the review, if you need help on certain aspect of the review process, then you have to contact the scientific review officers. Once your award is your application is awarded, then the grants management team will take over. So the grants management specialist will perform all kind of review on the business aspects of your application, and they can help you with all these business related issues. So one thing that is very important is to find appropriate grant mechanisms, and there are many factors that determine which grant mechanisms is appropriate for you, for your application. So it depends on what is the level of training and independence. If you are a graduate student or postdoc, then you may want to go for some kind of fellowship. If you are independent researcher, either as a faculty or on the faculty or not, you can apply through the all mechanisms. If you add an institute where the focus is more on educating undergraduate students, or you add an institute where you the focus is educating groups of underrepresented minority, then you can apply for the 15 or 16. I will talk about that more in a second. And also, how well developed is your research problem? Does it have prelim data already or not? If you have no prelim data, you can apply through the R21 mechanism, which is a high risk, high reward mechanism. If you already have prelim data that is strong, if you have very confidence on the methodology, you should go for the R01. Also, we fund, in addition to funding research project, we also fund research program as well. What that means is that you can apply through the mere mechanism on the majority of your research program, which means that you can get support for 2 or 3 different projects, not just one. So we can talk about that more. So just to remind you that depending on the career stage, if you're a graduate student, a medical student, you can apply through the training or the fellowship program. Or if you're a postdoc, you can apply for a postdoctoral institutional training grant or the individual fellowship. And if you're interested in becoming a faculty member, you can apply through the K99 or 00 mechanism. In this case, you get 1 year of mentorship, maybe possibly on the 4th year of your postdoctoral training, and then you can become an independent faculty and get support through the R00 mechanism. If you are independent research already, we have different mechanisms for you. So as I mentioned, the R1 is very popular, and that applies to majority of the application at NIH. But NIH has a special mechanism as well. It's called a mirror. I mentioned that a little bit already. It's on your majority of your research program. And we also have the R21 if you have no preliminary data yet, or the R15 and 16 for undergraduate focused institution or for underrepresented institution. So the R15 is there are different paths that you can apply for. One of them is for the Academic Research Enhancement Award, which is for undergraduate focused institution. Here you can get a small research project funded at amount 300K direct cost for 3 years. If you add an institution that serves students from groups that are underrepresented in biomedical research, you can apply for the SUL program. The SUL program can either give you 100K direct per year for 4 years, or 125 if you never received any independent external research grant before. You can contact Arena for more information. So as I mentioned earlier, the PEN R1 is a popular mechanism through which we fund research. And this research projects are initiated by Investigator. They, as long as their research fit our mission, we will accept them. And we fund, discrete hypothesis-driven projects with specific aims. And this particular code right here, PA2185, is for that PEN R1 mechanisms. So for this one, you should contact the program officers. And if your project is on computational biology, then you should contact either myself or Dr. Wong in the audience as well. The other all one that we can find is through the technology development program. So instead of supporting research that work on hypothesis, we also fund technology development as well, and depending on the level, the stage of technology that you at. If the technology is in the early stage, it's a proof of concept and value, then we can fund them through the R21 mechanism without preliminary data. But if your technology is already mature and it needs a little bit more validation in order to disseminate it, then you can do some benchmarking study to compare the security of your technology to other methods out there. And you can do that through this all-one mechanisms that's focused on technology development. But if you want to use your technology and addressing biological questions, then you should go for the parent all-one, as I mentioned earlier, or the MIR program. So the MIR program I will talk about next. The MIR program, what it stands for is Maximizing Investigator Research Award. It's also called R35, and it's only available at NIGMS and a few other institutes, but let's just focus on the one at NIGMS for today. So it provides individual investigator with 5 years of support, so therefore you have more stability, that you can focus on your research and mentoring your student. What that requires is that you cannot get any additional funding from NIGMS at all. So here, as I mentioned earlier, that it provides you with some level of flexibility because the proposal doesn't require specific aims. Instead, you talk about the different projects in general. The flexibility here meaning that you have a chance to change the direction of your research if needed, as long as the new direction fit within our mission, then we'll be okay with it. So here, the single PI have to devote at least 51% of your research effort into on this MIR award. We have two different funding opportunities. One is for the early stage investigator with 2 submission deadlines in February and October. For the early stage investigator, you don't need to have fill-in data at all, or you don't have to have independent publication, which is great. So in majority of people apply in the first 3 years or so. If you already established investigator, then you must have a qualifying award to NIGMS before you can apply for a MIR award. But if you are a new investigator, that means that you haven't received any funding from NIH at all, but you have received your PhD a long time ago, more than 10 years, then you qualify as a new investigator. In that case, you can just apply directly to this funding announcement without having a qualified award. So for more information, you can contact Dr. Kaduri or Dr. Ni. In addition to supporting different universities, we also support small business as well. So for the research and development activities that have strong potential for commercialization, we support funding for innovative SBIR projects that could benefit the research communities related to our mission through two different mechanisms. One is called STIR, that's so the small business technology transfer, and so the small business innovation research. For more information, you should go on the website listed here, and or contact Eddie. As I mentioned in the beginning, that we belong to a branch of the bioinformatics and computational biology branch. So this branch, our branch actually support all kinds of bioinformatics and computational research and technology developments as well. And this kind of research required addressing biology using different methods in computer science, engineering, mathematics, biostatistics, and physics, as well as using approach. As long as they have the potential for broad application and usage. We have 4 focuses in our program to fund modeling and computational method development for bioinformatics tools analysis method, and also for data repository as well. We fund different methods in biostatistics and quantitative analysis of biological data and health informatics. So we don't have this specific program for different sub-area, but as long as your research project fit our mission, we will take them. We also work with NSF as well, jointly, to support fundamental research in mathematics and statistics that address questions in biological and biomedical sciences. The requirements here is that you have to have projects that fit within our mission, of course, on fundamental research. And your projects have to show high level of innovation in mathematics and statistics and computational methodology. And it also requires a very well integration of the mathematical approaches that can address important biomedical biological problems. So this program, we have 2 tracks that give you funding up to $600K for 3 years for track 1, or $1.2 million total for track 2. And the submission is in September, and the submission has to be made to NSF. So for those investigators that have been very familiar with the NSF system and doesn't want to apply to NIH system because our system is so complicated, you're welcome to submit it to this program. And for half of the application that gets selected for funding, they will be transferred to NIGMS. That's an all-one grant. So for more information, if you want to talk about it, I am the contact person for this program. So lastly, I want to focus on the MIDAS projects, right? So MIDAS is for computation modeling to improve detection, control, and prevention of emerging infectious diseases. So as I mentioned, we don't have any specific program for them in our branch at NIGMS. But as long as your project fit this mission, our mission, then we take them and you can submit them to different mechanisms. One is through the Investigator initiated research grant mechanisms that I talked about already, R1, R21, R15, R16, R35, and the submission have to be made through NIH. Or you can submit them to the biomass program, as I just discussed earlier, through NSF. So you have 2 choices here. And as I mentioned, I want to emphasize that your MIDAS projects have to fit within our mission. So in that case, I'd like to remind you again that we do not support research on a single disease unless it's used as a model for elucidating basic principle. What that means that if you just want to focus on COVID-19, for example, that project cannot be accepted by us. It should be submitted to NIH. But if you would like to learn about infectious disease in general, let's look at, the effect of mutable infection over a short period of time. What does it do to your immune response? We will take them, and you're allowed to use one or two different diseases as a model system so that you can elucidate the basic principle of infectious disease. So if you're not sure about that, you're welcome to send us an email with the abstract, and we'll be happy to look over that. So again, we don't have any specific MIDAS program, but we have many different mechanisms for you to apply. So I encourage you to get in touch with us and explore that mechanisms, these mechanisms for submissions. So in the last few minutes, I'd like to go over some tips for successful submission through the NIH grant funding mechanisms. So when you write your proposal, you have to know your audience, specifically the possible reviewers of your application. We have many review panels. So for the MIR application, we have 4 specific panels devoted to the MIR application. So it starts with NR, A, or B, or C, or D. Listed here, you can search for them online. For the non-MIR application, you should use a tool that we have online. So this tool is called Assisted Referral Tool, called ART. You can enter the abstract and the title of your projects, and it will give you a list of possible review panels. For each review panel, it gives you relevance, how strongly related or appropriate that panel is for your application. If we give you a strong relevance, then it's a good indication that your proposal might land it there. In addition, it gives you membership of the reviewers, the roster as well. So therefore, you know all possible potential reviewers, and you can look at the list and figure out how many of them are expert in your field, and how many of them are experimentalists, how many of them are computational people, so that you can write your proposal targeting this audience. For the application preparation, if you are uncertain about whether the application is a fit with us or not, you're welcome to contact us anytime. And of course, you have to read and follow the instruction carefully, especially the funding announcement. When you prepare the application, one thing to pay attention to is the abstract and the specific ends, because that's what the scientific review officer look at when they determine the appropriateness and the potential review panel and institute to send the application to. There's a long list of reminder here when you prepare the application, but I want to focus on one thing. As I think the majority of you are computational folks, so therefore for computational proposal, you need to have experimental validation that have to be included in the proposal. After you submit the application, when you submit the application, you should submit it 2 days before the deadline, so that just in case there's some error that was made, you can make a correction, because once the application has the deadline, there's nothing else you can do. But one thing that you can do before you submit the application is always to have your application read by your mentor, people that have received funding from us already. Those are the one that may give you a good feedback on your application. So I would recommend that strongly. So here, the last slide here, I want to focus on early stage investigator, because a submission of an application to NIH is a very, very complicated task, but we have many people available for you to get help from, your mentors, your colleagues, and especially your program officers. So here I just want to summarize that if you're a postdoc and you're interested in becoming a faculty, you should try the 1099 or 00 mechanism. If you have no prelim data and early in the stage of career, let's say you became a faculty member, you should try our MIR program right away. You should use your startup fund to acquire prelim data so that you can apply for the all-one. You can use our Matchmaker so that you can figure out which project has been funded and the extent and the ambitions, what kind of question that this project trying to answer, so you can gauge the scope of your project. So here you're trying to get funding for 5 years. Keep in mind that you cannot control the whole world by for this one submission. You have to be very focused for 5 years. So one thing as an ESI, as an early stage investigator, you have many advantages until the time is running out. But one thing is that you're allowed to submit both MIR and all-one at the same time. That's the only time that you're allowed to do that. One thing I like to remind everyone is that we have a website, a blog online. It's called NIGMS Feedback Loop blog that gives out a lot of information, especially on the funding decision that we have made over the years. So they even give out some statistics on the number of applications have been funded through the all-one or alternative fund mechanism. As you can see right here, in the past 6 years or so, the number of the MIR, the alternative fund application, have increased significantly compared to the all-one. And so that's why I encourage the ESI early stage investigator to apply to the MIR mechanism. We also publish data on the probability of getting funded as the function of the impact score as well for the MIR application and for the all-one application as well. So if you have any question, please send us an email, or we can talk about that today. Again, thank you for the attention. I'd be happy to answer any question you may have.
Great, thanks, Han. That was really, really interesting. We've got a couple of questions already in the chat, so I'm just going to fire these off, and then if anybody else has any questions, please put them in the Q&A, or you can, and we will try to get to them. So the first question here: would a project that aims to link disease dynamics with climate be a good fit for NIGMS?
That's a tough one. Maybe Jean can help me with this one. So we actually have a institute that focuses on the environment as well, environmental health, right? So as long as your research is trying to answer some general questions about infectious disease, then we will take them. But if the focus is more on the environmental effect, we may not take that. We may have to consult with our colleagues through the other institute. So that's a great area right there.
So can I just jump in a little bit with a comment on that? Because my impression as not as an NIH person, but as an investigator who writes proposals is that in a case like that, what I would do, and Han, I'd like you to tell me if this is not correct, I would probably write up the aims.
Right.
I would send them to you for comment,
Sure.
and let you give your thoughts and advice on whether it was responsive. Is that what you would suggest?
Yes, that's what I've been saying throughout the presentation, that please contact us anytime when you're uncertain about the appropriateness of your project to our mission. Just send us an abstract and we'll be happy to go over that. So without knowing that projects in more detail, I cannot say for sure, but we can have a little bit more information. We can talk about that. We can even schedule a meeting and discuss it.
So I think that actually relates to the other question here, which somebody said, how can I know if NIAID or NIGMS is the best fit for my proposal? And again, it would seem there to just ask both NIAID and NIGMS as program officers of both and see if they see who is more interested. Is that what you?
Yes. So that's why we offer that suggestion to go on that website, the Matchmaker, so that when you enter your abstract, it will show potential program officers at different institutes with the contact information, and you contact both people at NIAID and people at NIGMS, and whoever more interested in your project, they will talk about that. But here you exploring the potential institute for your application. In the end, when the full application come in, it's the center of scientific review will be the one that made the decision. That decision that will transfer them to the program. So we cannot say for sure which one will end up at, right? But if your application is on infectious disease in general, you can talk about. If you're not focusing on a single one, if you're just focusing on Ebola, then it will go to NIAID. If you focus on multiple diseases, it will go to NIGMS. Henry, you're on silence.
Yeah, we do have it. Thank you. We do have another question here. Would a proposal on using deep learning methods to improve the prediction and uncertainty quantification for infectious disease modeling be within scope of the joint DMS NIGMS initiative?
Yes, as long as you show that your method have high degree of innovation. If you just applying some standard method out there, then it will not pass that bar. If you have to, so therefore, that program is run through the Division of Mathematical Science. So NSF. So therefore, you're allowed to discuss the mathematical innovation extensively in your proposal. Right. So if you're just applying in some standard technique, it won't fly. It won't be accepted for review.
So I'm going to ask a question. We don't have anybody else in the chat, so I'll throw something out here. I'm curious about a little bit about biomath, and
Right.
I before I ask my question, I just want to say is I love the presentations like this, because I feel like I spend a lot of my time thinking about NIH proposals and learning what programs there are, but I'd never heard of biomath, so I'm really glad to have learned about it. But I'm curious about the process. You said it goes to NSF, so is it formatted and reviewed as an NSF proposal? Or does it look like an NIH proposal? Because as anybody knows who's done both, they're very different in their construction.
Right. Yeah. So the goal of this particular mechanism for us is to get people that that have never applied to NIH before, and they can, and they're familiar with NSF process already. They just apply to NSF directly. So therefore, the requirement have to be, they have to meet the NSF requirement, everything. Right. Yeah. So that's how we encourage people, especially in statistics and mathematical science, to apply, but they apply directly to NSF that meet the NSF requirement.
Oh, got it.
Okay. And then it go through the review process, and the review panels, the reviewers are recommended by both NSF and NIH, but they run it through the NSF system. And then we come together, NSF and NIH come together and decide which one to take. So half of them will be NSF. The other half will be accepted at our institute. They will be transferred over as a regular all-one application. And then from there, the advantage there is that you can actually renew those applications at NIH if you get accepted to the NIH system.
Got it. Got
right.
it.
So, but then the next time when you renew, you have to renew through the regular all-one mechanism.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's really helpful. You know, it's having done both, and I know there are definitely people in MIDAS who are more NIH people, and there are other people who are more NSF people. It's a definite frame shift to go from one to the other, and the construction of the proposals is different, and the supporting materials are different, and the review is different. So you need to know which path you're going down to be successful.
That's right.
Okay, a couple of other questions here. Do you fund entities from overseas? And if yes, what are the criteria for that selection?
I think you cannot be the contact PI. You can do collaboration with the investigator in the US, so that therefore you can apply as a co-investigator, but you cannot apply them directly for majority of the funding mechanisms. You have to be based in the US to apply as a contact PI, but you can do collaboration, and you can get some, you can get a sub-award and get funded that way. So my recommendation is to form a collaboration with someone in the US.
I will add some additional comments in terms of the foreign institution and eligibility. Actually, you can, as a foreign institution, you are eligible to apply through the parent R1, the standard R1, which you don't need to have a collaborator. The review process is the same as any other applications, like from US. It just at the review, the panel, the reviewers are going to ask questions about whether, you know, they will have additional criteria, additional factor they have to evaluate in terms of the foreign institutions qualification, scientific area expertise, like any other US applications. There is also additional administrative process. And also if the funding got a good review, and it has to be, before we can even program review it, we have to bring it to the council to get approval for funding. So there's extra steps from both the review steps and also the funding step.
Right. The best way to determine whether your institution is eligible or not is to contact your grant office at your institution and ask them if they if your institution is eligible to apply for this mechanism or not.
Yeah, and also if you're really interested in specific funding announcement, we call the NOFO now, you can look into the NOFO carefully. There's a section for eligibility, and some specific NOFO, they will require our US institutions, but some they will say foreign institutions are eligible. So you can also do your own study or research by reading through the NOFO announcement.
Great. One hopefully relatively simple question. Somebody wants to know if the slides of the presentation are going to be shared. We will definitely have the recording up on our YouTube site next week. Han, if you're willing to send along the slides, we will share those as well.
Yeah, we'll be happy to provide them.
Okay, great. Thank you. I don't see any other questions here. I'm going to throw one out, which is going to be sort of the crystal ball, and it's going to ask you to speak for somebody else, so you may not be able to give much of an answer, but I am curious about the interplay when it comes to infectious disease modeling between whether it ends up at NIGMS or whether it would ever be something that NIAID would pay more attention to. Historically, NIAID hasn't really funded much in the way of the sort of modeling. Do you think that's going to stay that way? Do you have any insight into that at all? And I realize it's not your decision to make, but I just thought I'd ask how you see that situation.
I think lately NIAID has been more willing to fund modeling work, but historically NIGMS has been the one that fund a lot of this work from the main level. So it depends on the kind of questioning you're trying to ask. If you are more interested in developing foundational model, it'll be more from us rather than NIAID.
Okay. Yeah, and realizing that there's always going to be a lot of gray area there as well.
Right.
I know folks doing NIH funded infectious disease modeling research that are neither NIGMS nor NIAID, and so I think everybody should be ready to cast a wide net to try to find out where they're going to land best.
Right.
Okay, well, I don't see any further questions, and so I think it's probably a good time to wrap up. Oh, okay, one more. Here's one more question. Can you give me more details about the DMS NIGMS initiative panels? I am from the DMS comp side.
The review panel itself. Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that when it comes to review, we recommend NIGMS recommend half of the potential reviewer. The other half came from NSF. But one thing I can comment on is that it will have half of the people doing computational work, half of the people doing experimental work.
Mhm.
So therefore, the integration between mathematical innovation and biological problems is very important. It's a tight integration between the two components. So therefore, the audience can be from both computational and experimental science.
Great, thank you. Okay, I think with that, it's a great time to wrap. Han, Jean, thank you for your time. And as I said at the start, thank you for all of your efforts on behalf of the scientific community. We really do appreciate it. And thanks to all the attendees. We'll see you next month at the next MIDAS webinar. Have a great Memorial Day weekend, everybody.